Hi, Davina here. I hope that you're well. I just thought I would put a short video together to give you an opportunity to have a look in your own time regarding some of the things that we spoke about in February, particularly the Cartman drama triangle, the empowerment triangle, and then this principle of having above or below the line in terms of how we're operating. Before I dive into that though, this is all around, how do we lead ourselves? How do we lead others? And I just wanted to say, if you haven't already, take a moment to look back over how you are, how you have done, because I'm sure you've done a really great job already. And this is purely just about an opportunity to reset and think, right, how do we want to be? How do you want to be as you kind of move forwards? There's been so much coming in at you from all different angles. This just gives us an opportunity to sort of check in with ourselves and think about moving forwards. And these models give you a reflection tool. So before I move in to talk a little bit more about the Cartman drama triangle, just this principle of above and below the line behaviour, because I know quite a lot of people connected with that. And it can be quite an easy concept to talk about with our teams as well, without necessarily going into some of the mechanics of the triangle. So the principle essentially is if we're operating below the line, we're more likely to be operating in a place of drama and unhealthy conflict. There's examples that talk about lots of organisations across the world operate within that cycle, and there can be quite a lot of relationships within that. But within any organisation, it's all about relationships, and it's all about how we interact with each other. And the principle is if we're operating below the line, those interactions are probably less healthy and less constructive in terms of moving forwards. We'll all have our own ways of knowing whether we are below the line, and it's just worth reflecting on how do you know that for yourselves. It's likely you'll feel it if you're tuned into your body. It might be your heart races a bit more, your pulse is going, and therefore your pulse is going fast. It might be you just feel a bit heavy, a bit tense behind the eyes, and your brain's just not kind of thinking clearly, and there's a lot of negativity associated with that. In parallel, when we're operating above the line, the principle there is, whilst there may still be conflict and challenge, it will be positive, it will be healthy, and it will be about moving the business, moving the individuals forwards. There'll be more alignment, a bit more engagement, you may feel more energised and really more creative, so you're probably more likely to get kind of more voices, more input, and be able to actually work and solve problems and work things through rather than necessarily being quashed as they could be perhaps in below the line. And then in terms of how we feel when we're above the line, we're probably breathing a little bit easier, potentially feeling a little bit lighter, and more energy and more kind of just buzz and spark is taking place. And that is all possible even in the world's, in situations that are challenging. It's just important to just check in with ourselves. So that's the real principle of above and below the line behaviour. And I know people connected necessarily with that language. So I'll just encourage us to think, where are you, where are we? I know I jump between the two sometimes, and it's how do I check myself back in to work out where I'm at. So then if we have a little bit more time, if we just spend a little bit more time below the line, so we have our drama triangle, and we've talked about, and we've got 3 different roles within that. We have our coach, we have our rescuer, and we have our victim. Now the principle here is to be in a drama triangle, that needs to be often all 3 roles, but at least 2 of them. It's hard to have a drama on your own, not impossible, but it's quite hard to have a drama on your own. And therefore that's why it's really important to think, well, where am I? Because actually, am I helping with some of this drama? And the key one that's really quite important, it's quite hard to be operating for a sustained period of time in the victim role if there isn't a persecutor or a rescuer kind of reinforcing some of that behaviour and helping that to continue. It is worth adding that I'm not referencing from a mental health perspective, that's something completely different. This model is talking about how we're operating and functioning within the world of work, within a kind of normal scenario. even though we're abnormal at the moment, but I just wanted to be really clear, because some of the language used here, you could touch on a little bit of depression. It's nothing to do with that. Mental health is a completely different topic. So if I start here with our persecutor, just briefly, or our villain, that's also the way that this particular role can be described. So our villain this is all about fault, and blame, and we're likely to hear that in potentially sort of more aggression or a language associated with, you're not okay, I am, do what I tell you to do. So I'm pointing my finger even, because quite often it can come across in that way. But really this is around you're to blame, you're at fault. And we may be hearing this now about the business generally, about management, or about the government, or we see quite a lot in social media about, what are those idiots doing, going to the shop or going out or walking. So it's real judgments being applied without necessarily full context in some cases, but very much around blame, very much around fault, and about kind of unhealthy sort of challenge that's coming in there. So you're not okay, I am, do what I tell you to do. So really kind of enforcing some of that blame. And then if we hop across to our rescuer, or our knight in shining armour, charging in on the white horse, this is around, let me fix you, let me sort your problems out, let me sort you out, let me help, let me do this. So this is very much about, being needed by others. So poor you, you're not all right, let me fix you, let me help you. And I'm not talking about the thousands of people and the great work that's taking place where people are actually needing help, and they've asked for help in particular ways, but I'm talking about where you're kind of deciding what help the person needs in terms of fixing them. Simple example, I could use for mum. She's at home at the moment, and at the beginning of this, she's what am I going to do, etc., etc. So I'm telling her lots of things that she can be doing, giving suggestions, giving ideas, and trying to set things up. Actually, a more simple question would have been, well, what does she want to do? And actually asked her, and then provided the support and help that she wanted, versus telling her what would help her best. And then we've got our victim position here. So this is when the individual is really feeling quite powerless, and they're at the effect of everything. So everything's being done to them. So I'm powerless. I can't control anything. So maybe language like I'm stuck in the house. I just can't control it. There's nothing I can do. So a real sense of kind of powerless, of no ability to control anything or do anything. And I referenced the word control a couple of times, so I think that's quite interesting in terms of how we then move ourselves above the line, and how we think about that concept of what people can control within certainly the constraints of what we currently are operating within. So hopefully that gives people a good enough refresher, and you're able to kind of think about different scenarios for yourself, in terms of where you or others you may have noticed within it. And then just to say, it is possible to bounce amongst all three roles, most definitely. You may tend to operate more frequently in one of particular spaces if you come below, but you would certainly operate across all three, depending on the interactions or the situations. So if we then have a little look more above the line, and how this links in, we started with our persecutor before. So the principle here is actually operating above the line. Then that behaviour is actually more around what we called challenger, and it's like you can do it, and actually it's less about blame and more healthy pressure. So it may be that we're asking, putting more things in, asking people to put things in place for social distancing. It's asking people to put things in place for certain practices or policies as needed. It's asking or suggesting things that should be done, or making kind of healthy inquiry. So it is questioning, it is being assertive, but it's doing it within a healthy pressure way, or without this level of judgment that's perhaps being applied, and certainly without blame or fault. It's probably coming from a recognition that people are seeking to move forward, but how do we do it, and actually putting those challenge and those ideas and those questions within there. So healthy pressure, assertion, questioning, challenge most definitely, but from a non-judgment place. And then in terms of our opposite to our rescuer, or our knight on the right horse, we've got our coach. And the difference here is that individual really believes everyone's capable of solving their own problems. So therefore the question shifts into how will you do it? So if I go back to that simple example with my mum, what do you need? How will you do this? What can you help? So it's asking the individual what it is they need rather than making assumptions. So whereas this might be less, more about kind of suspending judgment, and again, suspending judgment, suspending assumptions about why people are operating in a certain way or judging their behaviours in a certain way, and it's about being open and asking those questions. And then our opposite to the victim behaviours that we're seeing is the language here of creator, and this is really lovely because this is actually about how we take responsibility. What can you do? I will do this, I can do this, and then you'll most notably notice probably kind of a stop and complaining, and more sense of this is what I can do, this is what my constraints are, this is how I'll operate. Doesn't mean we can't all have it, I'm not suggesting people don't complain or moan or get upset around different things, it's not about that at all, but there's certainly a shift of I've got no control to I can control this, I will take responsibility for this. So again, you may see this in stuff like, I might be stuck in the house, but I'm going to do X, Y and Z, whether that's sitting on the sofa all day and watching Netflix, or whether it's sorting and decluttering the house, which I can hear my husband doing at the moment, making loads of noise. That's up to you, and up to the individuals, but very much it's around taking that sense of responsibility. So I hope that gives you a good overview, or refresher or reminder of the different ways of operating. And then my final kind of points, when we talk about this more, is this is all about managing ourselves and managing others. And I quite often hear people ask, well, how do I help somebody that is operating sort of below the line? My first challenging question back always is, where are you? Where are you in that triangle, in that moment, in that time? As I said a moment ago, it's pretty hard to be in a drama on your own, and therefore that's where that kind of piece of self-reflection is really important, to just check in that we're not keeping an individual in a particular role, or supporting that individual in that role by operating in that particular way. And then in terms of just a couple of tips, but we'll talk more about this, and I want to love to hear from you guys. It's just really be aware of the labels. So if I'm feeling pretty low, pretty below the line, and someone says I'm being a victim, probably not going to take that so well. So really just be really mindful of those labels, and you need to use the judgment in terms of how you use it. The above and below the line seems to be a little bit softer. People seem more able to have those discussions, but again, you make the right judgment call for your team, for yourselves. And then I've referenced control, so I'd really encourage you consider that. Can any shifts be made there? Can you support people to take more control? In what way? What questions can be asked? What engagement? How does that happen? And then a little bit linked to the labels. It's okay to acknowledge behaviours or emotions. You might not be right though in terms of what's actually being felt or intended. So that's where you kind of I notice, I observe. Would be useful. And then that final thing, a lot of the drama triangle is based on, you're not okay, so I'm fixing you, or you're not okay, so you're asking to do what I want, or I'm not okay, everybody misunderstands me. And actually, I think the key thing, it's okay not to be okay, and particularly at the moment. And when we're above the line, that's okay, and it's just acknowledging it's okay just not to be okay, and when we are, what can we do, and until we are, what can we do, and having those discussions. So yeah, as I say, a few points there to reflect on, perhaps to think. I hope it was of some use and interest. And for those that I'll be seeing sort of this week or next week, it would be really fantastic to hear your own ideas and your own thoughts, and the experiences that you're having, and then to share with each other some different ideas as well. And I can't remember if I said it at the beginning, I think I might have done, but if I didn't, we know this is a challenging time at the moment. teams really need you, your families will really need you, and I'm sure you'll be doing a brilliant job. So do always take that time just to acknowledge the really great stuff that you're doing, and not to focus too much on the other side of it. But well done, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care. Thanks. Bye.